Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic, and welcome to today's edition of the Beyond the Vault. With me, of course, is the president and CEO of MilesFranklin.com, Mr. Andy Scheckman. Andy, welcome back to the show. How are you?
AC, good to see you, my man. Thanks for having me, brother.
Happy to have you on. Andy, every time we have these shows, I start collating some news articles for the next show. And every week I think to myself, man, what a crazy week. And then I get the next week, holy shit, it got even crazier.
Yeah, it is crazy, the acceleration of things. It used to be when we were young, like one crazy thing a once in a while. Now It's like every single day there's more. It's just the stimulus is overwhelming for sure.
It's this quickening effect is happening. Okay, so I want to do something a little bit different with you today. I'm just going to rhyme off maybe, I don't know, 9 or 10 titles of the news in the last week, and then we'll get to some of the articles. We'll get more in depth after that. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here. We're triple casting on Twitter, YouTube, and Rumble. Let's get right to it. So I'm going to start with the first one here. I thought this was a demarcation. Also, of course, the Repo Act just passing and authorizing the president here to confiscate Russian assets and to transfer them to Ukraine. This is the slippery slope here that begins a whole bunch of chess moves here moving forward. Of course, Russia today, one of their courts ordered the seizure of some asset here at JP Morgan. So we're already seeing part of the
tit for tat, huh?
Tit for tat, exactly. The United States also is proposing a draft sanctions to threaten to cut some of the Chinese banks off from global financial systems. Again, accelerating this who's allowed to play and who's not allowed to play on the financial system here. We're getting to how badly could that end, right? Homeowners, home buyer payments hit record high as mortgage rates climbed back over 7% for the first time in 2024. So things are looking bad for them. U.S. credit card debt is skyrocketing past $1 trillion again. Biden has proposed the highest capital gains tax in more than 100 years, 44%. That's nothing.
Aren't they trying to do 50% in Canada right now?
Yeah, we're pretty bad here in Canada to the point now. This is supposed to take effect, I think, the 1st of June, and people are thinking of selling their assets right now to get out from underneath having to pay this capital gains tax. So it's putting even more pressure now on real estate here. People are selling off their cottages to try to get out from under that. The Chinese have grabbed the gold by their throat, so to speak, as capital flight accelerates. We'll get into that a little bit deeper later today. Commercial real estate foreclosures soar to levels not seen in nearly a decade. All right. This one was interesting to me, too. Very important 90-second clip. You guys can find that on my Twitter. Basically explaining here the percentage of children that make more money than their parents. You see the slope is going down, so that's not a good indication. Of course, we're talking about the end of the dollar here. That's why here in Canada, they're predicting a 50% shrinkage of the purchasing power here over the next decade. I think that's optimistic, to say the least. It's probably way worse than that. And yeah, Elon Musk was tweeting this yesterday. Hey, the decline of the fall of the Western civilization, you are here. Andy, we're almost there. And at the same time, gold is at the nominal all-time high, and silver only at 42% of all-time high. So when do we get to this unobtainium? So that's my little wrap-up for the week. Any one news item in and of itself spells disaster for the financial markets and spells an equation for a bull market in gold and silver. Andy, just your first overview of everything I just put up there. Where are you?
I mean, the thing, my first thought is that they're all connected. I mean, they're all connected. They're all part of a bigger issue. And so that's really the problem, is that, how many fingers do you have to poke into the hole, the water that's flying out of the dam? They're all connected, which makes it even more difficult. So I don't think it's just they're independent of one another. I think in many ways they're systemic.
We're watching a cascading failure. Right. So it's one failure that's cascading into another. And that's why we're also seeing this quickening. So for anybody who can stand back and see the big picture, that's really what you're seeing here. It's a system, as you're saying. It's all connected. Now, let's tie that into the Treasury market here. You sent me this early this morning. 10 trillion in U.S. Treasuries coming to the market in 2024. What does that spell in your view? Where are we going?
Well, I mean, the question is, with all of the countries de-dollarizing and de-treasurizing, you look at China, they were over 3 trillion in treasuries at one point. They're down to just over 700 billion. And, I know that, Jim Willie, and he's a very interesting dude. And he said something the other day that I found fascinating. He's like, the UK is about to overtake China for number 2. And he says that, the U.S. is sliding money under the table so that the UK will buy our treasuries because no one wants to buy it, so that they don't have to admit to all-out monetization of assets. But when you realize that the Treasury or the Fed is supposedly, quantitatively tightening, where they are letting these treasuries roll off their balance sheet, and China, who used to be, number 2, or used to be number 1 with $3 trillion in treasuries, is now rapidly approaching number 3 as they continue to dump treasuries. We already know that Japan is, and Saudi Arabia and Iran and Russia have. And well, much of the world is dumping treasuries because of that other article that you showed, the sanctioning risk. And I think they're voting tomorrow on confiscating the Russian assets. I spoke how, Janet Yellen, the idiot, said this in Brazil. I mean, Brazil being the B in BRICS, that it wasn't enough to sanction Russian assets. We need to confiscate them to fund the Chinese, or to fund the Russian war, rather. And that's about as stupid as you can get. And now she's threatening to sanction the Chinese banks and the Chinese government and the Chinese companies if they aid in any way whatsoever the Russian military machine. Yet we can give $200 billion to the Ukraine. But if they want to aid their ally in the BRICS, well, we will sanction them. So the real issue is, who in their right mind wants to own our treasury, especially of any duration, where they can be taken from you? And if we don't align ideologically, well, we might just confiscate them. And yeah, I think it's a really, really, really big problem. And this is one of the reasons I think you see a floor under the price of gold. They are selling treasuries and buying gold. And, now we have a situation where $10 trillion, nearly $9 trillion, has to be refinanced this year. Who's going to buy $10 trillion in bonds when the number 1 owner, that's the Fed, is now out of the market? Number 2, China, they're selling. Who's going to buy all this debt? And that's really the big question that leads.
Are they going to try to? Are they going to try to force the pension funds to buy this? Is that one of the parts of the great thinking? I know this is conjecture at this point, but could that be possible that that's what they're going to try to do to loot one last time here?
Well, in 2009, there was a bill that floated all the way down to the House floor that said just that the IRAs, rather, at the time, 17 trillion in IRAs would be used to buy U.S. treasuries in the event of a problem. It would be under the guise of national emergency and your patriotic duty. So everyone's IRAs would be liquidated and put into an annuity of sorts backed by U.S. treasuries. Now, it never was passed. It was vetoed. But the point is that, to me, it was almost opening Pandora's box. They certainly are aware of it. And yes, I think if push came to shove, those are the kind of draconian moves that they would make all IRA money, and maybe the pension money, which, look, the pensions are in big trouble too, based upon faulty expectations. They could for sure go that way under the guise of that. I find that to be far more plausible than that ever happening again, where they confiscate gold. I just think that would be an easier path.
Well, in Canada, there was a trial balloon just 2 months ago. I think you and I talked about it. Our Minister of Finance talked about the fact that they needed to put our pensions to fund back to work to kind of reboot the economy. That was code word for, oh shit. They might put that in harm's way. This leads us into this Cloward-Piven strategy, moving from this capitalist idea of America into this socialist idea. Like, in my perspective, my humble opinion, feels like this is 90% complete, 95% complete when you look at some of these old strategies. Explain that, first of all, to the audience members, what this Cloward-Piven strategy is and where you think we're at now, and what are the critical points maybe just ahead of us here that might seal the deal here towards that tweet that Elon Musk was posting earlier.
Yeah, and I've been talking a lot about this lately. I know Pablo Pina there and my good brother Jake Customs Parts mentioned Anthony Blinken is in China this week. Well, Anthony Blinken, along with all the things that I've talked about on your show, JC, Anthony Blinken, along with Obama, Madeleine Albright, Bill Barr, Eric Holder, Jared Bernstein, they all went to Columbia University. And Jared Bernstein's the big one in all of this, as I believe he is the architect of the de-dollarization plan, by weaponizing the dollar and by signing executive order to go green, telling the Saudis and OPEC we're going a different direction. He is the guy who who I've said ad nauseum is the one who doesn't want the reserve status anymore. He's the lead economic advisor to the government. He believes it's a privilege we can no longer afford. And I've talked about his dethroned king dollar and all this stuff. But he's a graduate from Columbia, as is Obama, and then others like Anthony Blinken, who's in China right now. The reason I mention that is this Cloward-Piven theory. I want to give a shout out to Mark Moss for opening my eyes to this. But all of the things I've talked about, the things that bother me the most about what's going on, I've said a million times, look, we can shit the bed all we want with the management of the reserve currency. We've shown that. All of the weaponizing, all of this stuff. But if the country was still the beacon of justice and freedom and liberty and orderly and respect and you know how you're supposed to run an election and how the Justice Department's supposed to, you know, the presumption of innocence over guilt and all of these things that are bothering me so much, the evisceration of the inner cities, I couldn't match it up to something. I just knew it bothered me. And then I look at this, the Cloward-Piven theory. I task everyone with Googling it. Read that article. And you should post, JC, a link to it, because basically, and if you're going to read it, I'll just paraphrase a few things. You know, they were two professors, husband and wife, who taught at Columbia, Cloward and Piven, and they outlined a plan to socialize America by overwhelming the system with government spending and entitlement programs. I'm just going to read a couple of them so people understand. The primary objective of the strategy is to create chaos with the hopes of destroying America's capitalist economy and replacing it with a socialist system that includes guaranteed incomes. A massive drive to recruit the poor onto the welfare rolls and send the United States into an economic crisis. Right now, with the 12 million illegal immigrants here, understand that 63% of illegal immigrants are now accessing some form of government funded, taxpayer funded welfare, compared to only 35% of American households. They say that they specifically mentioned targeting America's largest cities for their colossal welfare push. A series of welfare drives in large cities would impel action on a new federal program to redistribute income. They believe the best way to achieve their goals is to create a new loyal voting bloc out of the rapidly increasing number of welfare recipients. So think about all of the 12 million people here that are going to be given things for free. You think they'll ever vote for the Republican Party that may want to deport them? Certainly cut off all of the entitlement plans. Just a couple more. The theories of Cloward and Piven insist that the intentional destruction of America's major systems will compel the federal government to develop a communist universal basic income program. We've heard that a million times. Google universal basic income, and there's gazillion articles, recent ones, of this becoming more and more and more. And then lastly, and think about this one, JC, and God bless you, brother, for this, because God bless you, and I mean that sincerely, as being a form of truth. And both Cloward and Piven agreed that the mainstream media would play a critical role in their organized attack against America. To quote Cloward and Piven, as the crisis develops, it will be important to use the mass media to inform the broader liberal community about the inefficiencies and injustices of welfare. I'll let people read the rest. But the bottom line is, you overwhelm the welfare system. You overwhelm the entitlement system. You let all of these people in and create a whole new class of people that will never vote for anyone else but for the dole. You put them on universal basic income. You go to a central bank digital currency, modern monetary theory. This is the stuff that I've been talking about, but now I had no idea that this was a theory taught at Columbia University. And look who's there, Jared Bernstein and Obama and the others. And if you Google Jared Bernstein / Cloward-Piven, you'll see he's an advocate of it. This is a dude who wants to get rid of the world reserve status. So you weaponize the dollar, you piss everyone off, you talk about confiscating assets when you're wholly hypocritical. We can give $200 billion to the Ukraine, but if China does, we're going to sanction everyone. The banks, the country itself, and all the companies. I mean, really? And then, you know, let the country itself fall into chaos. And you wonder, holy shit, is this really happening? And when I read that article, I walked away from it almost in a cold sweat thinking, yeah, I mean, this is insanity. All of the things that I speculated on, was taught at Columbia University. Just so happens that our former President Obama, he used to be there, and now the current economic advisor to Biden. Is this coincidental? Or is it, as Bill Holter says, too stupid to be stupid or too stupid to not have been planned? I'll leave that up there, but read that article, man. It's crazy. Can't hear you. There you are.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there. Like I said at the beginning of this segment, like I think we're 95% there. At least they're trying to implement the strategy. Whether or not they're succeeding at this, that remains to be determined. I wanted to ask you, did you by any chance see the movie The Civil War? It came out 2 weeks ago.
I have not seen it. I want to see it, and I was planning on see it, and then a guy that I watch once in a while on YouTube, Jeremiah Babe, he's an interesting guy. He went to the movie and basically said it was crap, that it didn't really, there was no story to it, no moral.
Well, that is one of the negative comments about this movie, because they don't really give you a lot of narration to tell you who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, how everything leads to this civil war. But if you decode and you take your time to look at every interaction that the main characters have here in the movie, you get glimpses of it. And the reason I'm asking is because it appears for all intents and purposes that this civil war is created by an economic meltdown. At some point, the main character, sorry for the the spoiler alert, guys. If you haven't seen the movie, just mute for a second or two here. But the main character goes to try to get some gas. And in order to get gas, there's two bars to meet. One, they have to prove that they have good intentions and that they're good people. Which is odd. You don't have to do that today, right? You just go somewhere and you decide what you want to buy. And two, you have to negotiate with what currency. Because at what
I heard
point,
they said Canadian dollars in the movie. Someone
because she says, I'll give you $300. He says, oh no, you could buy ham sandwich for $300 at the counter, or the cheese sandwich, but not gas. Like, are you kidding me? And then she says, oh, Canadian dollars, and then they make a deal. So they're suggesting here that the US dollar took a huge hit here. So there's something economic behind this movie. So fascinating nonetheless. I just did a decode with this with Janine last night. Maybe go check that out, Andy. You'll see a little bit more details about where.
Well, think about it. No matter what happens, JC, in November, you're going to have half of the country ready to engage in a civil war. I mean, if God forbid the current administration wins, God save our country, and if not, and if so, you'll have the whole half of the country thinking it was stolen.
Yeah.
And on the other side, you'll have these very vindictive and in my estimation, wholly radicalized left side freak the hell out. Any way you look at it, I mean, it seems like civil war. We're on the cusp of it right now, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I hope we don't get there, but it's just crazy. Andy, I know you're very passionate. Can you please stop banging on your desk? It's messing up your mic.
I'm sorry. I get, I get aggravated, and it's true, but
I know.
It's like, how is it that so few people get this? That's what that's what I mean. You are the media. Guys like you are the media, and the media itself is just not telling anyone in this country what's really.
Sometimes, Andy, you and I talk to each other and we think we're crazy. Like, how is it possible that, bigger brains than yours or mine don't get this yet? I don't understand. Either they do and they don't want to talk about it and they're protecting their paycheck. I don't know. Let's move to this segment here. So we were just treated to this a week ago here. Iran attacked Israel. And this kind of ties into this next segment. People were asking, well, why now? What was happening with that? Was this a negotiation tactic? We did a few decodes on that, and there appeared to be more that had yet to be undisclosed when we saw this particular attack come out. You sent me this article today. I'm like, oh, okay, now this is interesting. Will Pakistan go ahead to build the gas pipeline with Iran? Iran has threatened to take Pakistan to court over its failure to complete the pipeline project, but U.S. sanctions on Iran are an obstacle. So how do we tie this into the war effort, the Middle East? Where does it go? And how does this article now tie in also to that last leg holding up the petrodollar and then gold and silver? Again, this all ties in, Andy. Go ahead.
Yeah, it does. I mean, look, in this particular case, it's just more about sanctions, that we can tell the world that whom they can transact business with and how. And if they don't align with us ideologically, well, then you're out. And I do believe Pakistan has applied to the BRICS. So, the wheels are in motion. And I think in order to break free from the West, all of the pieces need to be put into place. But it's just a bigger picture that the U.S. can go around and sanction countries in a wholly hypocritical way. And I think that is going to have a massive blowback on the rest of the world. I just saw something, and I don't mean to stop. This Daniel Marks says, hey, let's ask Andy the tough questions about time value of money and how metals are. Daniel, I'd love to have a debate with you on that, brother. I mean, let's go back to 2000. Gold's averaged 9.1% per year compounding. It's outperformed everything but Bitcoin. Not quite sure how that is such a poor value, to be honest with you. And, when you talk about the time value of money, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem, is that the people in this country have become obsessed with instant gratification, not being fast enough. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, but my mentor, Richard Russell, said, you make 7% a year, you are a rock star on a historical context. And gold has outperformed all of it. Yep. And in 2000, it was $250 an ounce. And here we are at almost 2,400. I would like to know how that's a poor investment. And, I just, this is the kind
of that. Like you could, Andy, hold on. You could stop your argument right there. We understand the point. And then you add to the fact that we're in a Ponzi scheme, that everybody's lying to us, that there's counterparty risk everywhere. So removing that first point, if you just say, hey, I'm holding on to my own wealth without any counterparty risk, that too is so important and significant, specifically in these times. We're at the end.
I think counterparty risk will be akin to the middle finger. Yeah. It'll be the FU for everyone to understand when we start to see more systemic collapses in a system that's all tied together and probably purposefully. Yeah. Look, you talk about the insurance companies and the banks loaded with treasuries, and it won't take but a few of those to break for the whole thing to start to spiral out of control in the commercial real estate. And then you look at the inner cities and all of this chaos happening at once. As I think you'll start to understand the time value of money as it pertains to an accelerating gold and silver price at that point. But until then, it's been the tortoise, not the hare. And at the end of the race, the tortoise has won with every asset class, with the exception of Bitcoin, which started from zero. So take that out of the equation. There's been nothing that's outperformed it.
Speaking of Bitcoin too, I'm not at liberty to say say too much, but I saw a report last week that suggested that some of the outflows, you kind of mentioned it, or moving out of treasuries, people are buying gold, but there's also an acceleration of that rate going into other assets right now. And people were kind of looking at the math and suggesting that by May or June, we might hit that critical point here where there's a huge problem on the financial system. So there's already something happening in the background, and it's accelerating every day, or the rate of acceleration is also going faster. Anyways, I'll try to do a show on this as soon as I get some permission to share some of that analysis.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it's not mine to give. I can send you a copy, but just not for the public yet. But again, it appears it's in the background right now, so that's interesting.
Thank you, Dan.
Let's get on this one here. U.S. leads the rest of the world here. Canada too. We keep giving money to Ukraine. Okay. Where does this madness end? I just saw a couple of days ago, too, that the U.S. now is sending boots on the ground, but they're disguising it as military advisors. Are we escalating to something else here, Andy?
I really hope not. I really, really hope not. But I guess the moral of the story, the point I'm getting at, is that we're incurring $1 trillion in debt every 100 days, and yet we find it appropriate to give $200 billion to this war when our borders are wide open, our infrastructure is breaking. And again, think of the Cloward-Piven strategy, where you just overwhelm the system with indebtedness. And at what point does the rest of the world say, we're done? So we give $196 billion to the Ukraine, but if China wants to give money to help Russia, their ally, no, they're going to be sanctioned. And this is really the problem. This is the rallying cry coming from a broken, insolvent paper tiger. And I keep saying the statistics. The Congressional Budget Office says that by 2031, 100% of all discretional spending will have to be borrowed. In other words, the interest, or excuse me, the accumulation of tax receipts will go just to pay the interest on the debt and mandatory entitlement spending. And you talk about mandatory entitlement spending. Medicare Part B is $99.5 trillion in the hole. Social Security, $77 trillion underfunded. Medicare Part D, the prescription side, $22.1 trillion. We have over $175 trillion in unfunded assets, and $1 trillion, or liabilities rather, and $1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. So we're that far in the hole on top of the $34 trillion debt, but we think we should just give money to another country instead of fixing our own shit at a time when the entire Senate is waving flags in the Senate chamber. the Ukrainian flag and cheering as nothing is being done for the border. Nothing. So it's just, you can't make it up. You truly cannot make it up.
Just to add insult to injury, in this last bill here, I was trying to look for the actual quote, but there's money in there for border security in Ukraine. So they can have money for border security, but not us here in North America.
You can't make it up.
No.
You really, and that's why I keep saying this is done intentionally.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be. Either that or the people running our country are just beyond inept and stupid. You know, is it too stupid to be stupid, as Bill Holter says, or he's corrected me and says, is it too stupid to not be planned? But it's the same thing. Yeah. And it is. So I don't know. I guess I'll leave that up to everyone else to decide.
Do you think Speaker Johnson's going to be removed?
He ought to be. He's an idiot. Yeah. He ought to be. He's a complete idiot. And aside from the fact that he's not aligned really with his own party, the decisions that he is making are just stupid. Again, it's almost like they got naked pictures of him with a goat or something, because
that's
like he's just completely flip-flopped, and they just make no sense. I mean, you don't have to be a genius. Just be logical and use common sense. And the things that we are doing just make no sense at all. And largely giving all of this funding to the Ukraine. I mean, you know, a little bit at the first, fine, but to continue to do it at the expense of our own country is just
no, at this point,
it's an abomination.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to carry his water. I don't know the guy personally. I'm looking at this too. I had high hopes. Now looking at this, I'm like, oh man, it appears like somebody presented him with a manila envelope and said, hey, do this or else, type of thing, similar to what you just suggested. There are some out there who suggest that maybe he's playing a game somehow to entrap more, like this is an entrapment or a sting operation somehow to, I don't know. It's like, I'm not into that. Like, I'm just looking at what we're seeing, and every day we're seeing more and more money leave our country, leave our shores, and at the same time, we're paying for it, and system is not getting better. It's getting worse for us here in North America. So at some point, like sting operations or not, we have to take care of our own country. And I think this is what leads to the growing sentiment that we're seeing now here in Canada too. The RCMP submitted a report to government just a month ago, a secret report. Most of it is redacted, but in essence, they're saying, hey guys, the Canadians are going to revolt here as they realize how broke they are. And now we've had this new carbon tax introduced the 1st of April. The government itself gave itself a raise on the same day, just to add insult to the injury. And now, of course, this latest budget, which is absolutely, even the liberal rags are bitching about it in the last week or two here. So it's absolutely crazy. It's adding insult to injury. So your guess is as good as mine, who's the good players and bad players here. But at the end of the day, this shit looks really weird. Let's look at silver. India's silver imports hit record high again. Andy, what's going on with this? And why isn't silver moving right now too? Like, we're not at all-time highs yet. It seems, you know,
I think it's very important. First of all, yes, you know, you're talking with India, 500 million ounces they've imported in the last 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. That's over 10 times more ounces than there are bars backing the registered category, the bars that are running the COMEX, and they're buying everything that's not nailed down. The rumors are that China is shifting their attention through their populace to accumulation of silver as well. And, you know, I keep saying that there's a missing piece in all of this. And I showed this cup that I was sent from a guy who I met in Vancouver, mm-hmm. who told me he helped develop the Patriot missile system. And I always say, or a Tomahawk cruise system rather, and I Tomahawk cruise missile. And I always have said that there's 500 ounces in the tip of a Tomahawk. And he met me there 2 years ago when I gave this speech, and he came up to me and said, I work for the DOD. This is declassified. I think you're right. I'll find out. He came back and told me this year when I saw him in Vancouver, he said, you're right. There's between 14 and 15 kilos in a Tomahawk. Why is the military industrial complex and the need for silver in military applications not listed in the Silver Institute numbers? The pickaxe, John Little, has done an amazing job of bringing this to the forefront. I will give him credit. He's a hell of a researcher. And you have to ask yourself, is this why Bank of America is short 1 billion ounces, naked short 1 billion ounces in the OTC market? Is this why JP Morgan was short all that silver and paid a $920 million fine, the largest ever, for suppressing the market, yet is still allowed to continue to run the world's largest silver trust? Is this why 4 commercial banks hold the largest concentrated short position in any commodity traded in silver? A tiny little market. Why? Because in order to make missiles and high-tech aerospace and all of these ridiculously high-tech drones and missiles and whatever, you need silver, lots of it, let alone the ICBMs will take huge amounts of it. Is this why they're holding it down? And who is the military industrial complex? Is it BlackRock and Vanguard, the companies that have their fingers in all the pies and pulling the strings? Is this why they're holding the price down? Is this why the government isn't throwing all of these people in jail? And where the hell is the CFTC? And when Bart Chilton admitted this on Chris Marcus's podcast, excuse me, a few years ago, is there any coincidence, or is it purely coincidence that he died a week later? I'd like to hope it is. I'm not saying that there's foul play involved. There's just all of these conspiracies out there, and how fine is that line between conspiracy and reality? When the guy tells me I developed the damn thing and there's 500 ounces in a tomahawk, well, what about all the other high-tech stuff? Where's the silver in that? Why is it not listed in the supply-demand numbers that show 185 million ounce shortfall in silver? And if indeed you did not have these idiot, stupid as a mud wall banks suppressing the price of silver openly right in front of us all to see on COMEX or in the OTC market, the over-the-counter, then how high would silver really be?
Right.
And it's the tail wagging the dog, and it's jiu-jitsu. It's using your opponent's leverage against you. And I want to remind everyone, remember what the head of the Shanghai Gold Exchange said on May 15th, 2014. Shanghai Gold will change the current gold market with its consumed in the East but priced in the West arrangement. When China has the right to speak in the international gold market, the true price of gold will be revealed. That was a decade ago. They are slowly accumulating everything that's not nailed down, using the Western suppression against them. And India is doing it with silver. And now China appears to be moving to silver. And it's the intent of the military industrial complex, in my opinion, to hold the price down, because it is needed critically, just like the folks in Canada want to reclassify silver from industrial to critical. Well, this is a critical metal, and it's needed in everything from green and digital to military applications. And you know what? We seem to have this insatiable appetite for either funding or being involved in wars, never ending. If that is true, again, the fine line between conspiracy and reality, then why the hell do they not put it in the silver supply demand fundamentals? We're supposed to believe that solar demand is the highest form of demand. Yeah, and Big Swear has told us that those numbers are massively understated. But what about military? Just want people to think about that for a minute when you ask, why has it not fully expressed itself? And remember, the only way to manipulate a market over a long period of time is to push it in the direction it is going. Now, silver has been manipulated for a long time, but now, for the first time ever, you have countries, sovereign nations that are wealthy enough, they are sophisticated enough, and they are clever enough to say, oh, I see what you're doing. Good. Just like the head of the Shanghai Exchange said, when we fully are able to speak, the real price will be revealed. Well, the same thing is true with all of the world's commodities, and not just gold and silver. They're buying everything that you need, not that you would, not treasuries that are the debt of a sovereign nation, in a broke one at that,
right,
and hypocritical one, but everything from copper to wheat to soybeans to gold to silver, you name it. Not only that, the Chinese, as I've been saying a lot lately, bought the London Metals Exchange, the LME, which trades all the base metals. So, they see this very clearly, and they're using the suppression on COMEX and on the LBMA to pickpocket the world's commodities little by little, slowly. And then one day we wake up and say, what the hell just happened? And now we are completely reliant on a whole group of people that don't like us to provide us with the necessities that, these commodities that you need. And good luck on that.
Thank you for that, Andy. I really appreciate it. A lot of viewers also, they appreciate these conversations. A lot of information here. Big thank you to all of you guys for being on the show here. And a big thanks to Andy, of course, for all of his time and his insight. One last segment here before we look at some of the offerings you have here for the audience today. In this last article with Chris Marcus, you're talking about, we kind of touched upon it at the beginning of the show here with the sanctions, that this is the support here for gold, perhaps even silver here moving forward. let's move the needle forward. Let's look at some of these meetings that are happening now, between now and the fall for the BRICS. How close are we to a huge explosion in gold and silver? Do we see this very incremental fight all through summer? Some are suggesting that we could be getting closer to what Cliff High was saying, where the $1 a day moves in silver, then $5 a day moves in silver. He seems to think that this is this summer for silver. Are you seeing the rumblings in the market right now that could suggest some type of explosion here sooner rather than later? What do you see?
I don't, every time I think that's the mistake that a lot of us make.
Yeah.
I try never to say, I just look at the big picture and say, ultimately, when you base your ideas on mathematics and economics with some sprinkles of old school logic, it comes true. Can't run from it. Never when we think picking a date is a big mistake. It just delegitimizes what is sound economic theory. And I'm just going to read one little part of a Russian finance minister talking about the new BRICS currency that is coming. We don't know when. Is it going to be October? Maybe. Rickards thought it would be in August last year. Didn't come. Yeah. So what? They're waiting until they have mass adoption. But he says, talking about the new currency, he had said it's going to be a basket of commodities and currencies. We've said that. We've known that. He said it would be digital, like the Project M Bridge, which we just did the first ever cross-border gold transaction using yuan, digital yuan, where they're sidestepping SWIFT. But he says, the second part is price. For the moment, price is determined by Western speculation. We produce these commodities, we consume them, but we do not have our own price mechanism which balances supply and demand. He says it's impossible to make any strategic planning for economic development if you do not control the prices of basic commodities. Here's the kicker. Remember, they did just buy the LME for the base metals. He says price formation with this new currency should get rid of Western exchanges of commodities because they are buying it all using the suppression on the Western market right now. And when they have it all, and no one is stupid enough to sell it at the COMEX price and the LBMA price, bang, the Shanghai exchange, the Moscow exchange, the Dubai exchange, they will then set the price globally. And they're doing the same thing with soft commodities. Global prices are primarily determined for grain and wheat and soft commodities by the Chicago Commodity Exchange. Moscow also seeks to move away from trading grain and other soft commodities for the U.S. dollars in favor of the national currencies of the BRICS member states. This is a new BRICS grain exchange. They're telling you, we know the prices are quoted on COMEX, and they're bullshit. So I'll tell you what, we produce more grain than the West does. So we're going to have a grain exchange and list the real price. And think about the word arbitrage. They're already doing it with silver in China. In Shanghai right now, silver is $3 an ounce higher than it is in the West. That's called arbitrage. The traders will buy in the West and they will deliver in the East. And there it is. And little by little, they will suck it all over. That sucking sound you hear is slowly and methodically using the leverage against us. That's the little by little where the people say it's a nothing burger. It takes so damn long, it's nothing, and they poo-poo it and dismiss it until the all at once. That moment that you say that blow up, that's when that all at once, people will be so freaked out by the speed of the all at once, they won't know what hit them. And the little by little by little by little by little by little has been happening for the last several years. Watch it, see it. And now, as you said, it's quickening. Yeah. So could it be in June? Yeah, why the hell not? Maybe it's in October at the BRICS meeting. Maybe it's in November. Who knows? But the inevitability of it grows by the day. And that's more important to think of. It's not about if, it's when. When, I don't know. But it is coming. And to pick a date, I think only delegitimizes what is a good sound theory, unless you get lucky. And most people don't get that lucky.
I'm with you on picking the dates because I think it was Bill Holter and you on a show once. You said to me, and I thought, oh, wow, that's a great quote. Said, I'd rather be a day early to the party than a day too late, right?
Right.
So it doesn't matter the date. When you know that it's a question of if, you need to prepare. It's like buying insurance for your house. You don't buy it after it burned down. So really good points, Andy. I appreciate that. Let's look at some of the cool stuff you have for the audience members here today. I saw that you have some more junk silver. I think people were interested in that last week. You weren't sure about supply. You're at 275 over spot here for the dimes and quarters. What are these nice Liberty coins also you have here?
Those would be for people in the U.S., it'd be my favorite way to own gold, are the pre-33 coins, if you can get them at a very good price. And these are cheap. In historical context, they're cheap. I love them. I mean, I think it's a great way to own gold. Those were just like the picture behind me. That was a $10 gold coin in someone's pocket prior to 1933. And those are what's called AU grade, almost uncirculated. They're really nice condition, but they're circulated. Great way to own gold, and in a true piece of Americana. And then, of course, the maple leafs. And, you know, all of these orders on large orders, we can even sharpen our pencil a little bit better. But with the exception of the silver eagle and the gold eagle, which have both been rising, premiums on everything are still at, I don't know, stupid lows. Right. But I wonder if it's a precursor to higher premiums. The eagles have been going up, you know, a few cents almost every day, and now silver eagles are just under 575, somewhere in that neighborhood. And you know, that's high for 90% of my career, with the exception of the last 3 years when it was, you know, as high as 3 times that. So we kind of bottomed out on premiums over the last several months, and the eagles seem to be moving higher. But all three of these to me are very good values.
No, for sure. That's great also for the Canadian Maple Leafs. Guys, if you are on the Canadian side of the border and you're looking at getting some silver also, please do go check out mfbullion.ca. This week they have the 10-ounce silver bars here of your choice at $2.99 over spot. These are shipped directly from Canada and charged to you in Canadian dollars. Andy, anything else you want to share? Anything else on your radar coming up maybe for next week that you think is going to be of interest that might change the conversation, so to speak? Or any last parting words of wisdom here for the audience today?
I think we said enough. I mean, who knows what's going to happen next week? And that's really the crazy part. I try and spend as much time reading and keeping abreast of things that are changing, and albeit I do say a lot of the same things, because to me that's all that matters right now. I do mean that. I try to find pieces of information that support this thesis, because if I'm right, this will be the biggest event in all of our lifetimes. It will be the watershed event, the end of one system and the beginning of another. And I always say, and Jake will laugh, I say, trust your gut. Your gut's your best financial advisor. And, you know, don't buy gold and silver to get wealthy. They are wealth. I will be paying damn close attention all week long and see what arises next week. But I have a feeling there'll be lots to talk about. Look, as we get closer to the big BRICS meeting and to the election in November, I mean, anyone who doesn't think that this will become more volatile in every way, I think is missing the bigger picture. So, you know, again, I just appreciate being able to come here and be candid with someone who completely and totally understands it, like you do, and your listeners who get it. And, you know, spread the word best you can. The bummer is most people don't get it yet and won't get out of the way of what's coming at them. And if you can help one person, you've done a good job. And I just thank you for letting me come on your show each week. It's an honor and a privilege, and we love talking to your people. So, barring any craziness, I'll look forward to picking up where we left off next week, my friend. And thanks for everything.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. And I was just laughing at you saying, "Oh, I'm going to read the news." I'm like, for me right now, reading the news and staying up to speed takes more time than actually doing these videos. I don't have time to do videos anymore.
Well, and anyone who watches you knows how well read you are, and that's the key to anything, is preparation and understanding. And you know, people need to understand what you do, what I do. It takes an awful lot of effort. It does. And then you put yourself out there for the public to critique. Yeah. You know, it's a tough gig, but I love it. It's I got thick skin. I can take it when people say say whatever I am. That's all right. I mean, I hope some people know I'm sincere, and I try the best I can to contribute to a world that seems to be changing a little too fast for my liking. So for whatever for whatever it's worth, I love you like a brother. I appreciate what you do. I'm a fan of what you do and an admirer, and thanks for letting me be a small part of it.
I love you, Andy. Thank you so much for being on. And folks, yes, the work continues tonight. You can join me and Janine at 8 o'clock Eastern here on pay-per-view. And in the meantime, of course, you can go check out Andy here at milesfranklin.com. And if you're looking for silver, please go to beyondmystic.net/silver. Just fill out the form here, and Andy and his team will get back to you in short order. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and have a great day.
Bye, guys.